Okay, the second defilement is ill will. Here, the word given is, in Pali, it's vyapada. This is also mentioned as the second of the 5 hindrances, and it's also the second of the 3 types of unwholesome thought. Then the commentary mentions here, it refers to another sutta which speaks about 9 cases of aversion or resentment. These come in the Anguttara Nikaya. Let's see if I can remember them. I didn't review this. Okay, somebody does what is Anyway, maybe we don't have to go through all 9 of them. But if somebody does what is displeasing, disagreeable to me, aversion or resentment can arise. If somebody does what is disagreeable to somebody who is dear and beloved to myself, then aversion and ill will can arise. If somebody does something which is pleasant and agreeable to a person that I dislike, then again a feeling of ill will arise towards that person. So this is ill will. And then closely related to that is anger. This is number 3, koda. It seems ill will and anger are closely connected. But ill will seems to be more of a quiet, persistent type of aversion, a kind of continuous dislike for somebody and wishing harm for that person. Whereas anger is a feeling, an emotion which arises suddenly, and it can be directed towards either people or to circumstances or conditions. So if I want to go out, take a walk, say, or I have a plan to go make a trip, an outdoor trip on a day, and then it's pouring that day, I get angry, not at any person, but at the weather. I remember when I was a young boy, the baseball season started, and I was so looking forward on the Saturday to starting the baseball season. And that day, it rained, and I got so angry that I cut my fist and I banged the window, and I broke the glass of the window. As if breaking the glass is going to stop the rain. Okay, so this is anger, and then the Vibhanga gives a whole string of synonyms. Anger, being angry, angriness. Sometimes it's difficult to find suitable English words for these strings of Pali words. Hatred, hating, hatefulness, irritation, irritability, irascibility, opposition, resistance, displeasure of mind. If this doesn't make anger clear to you, then I don't know what will. Okay, then we come to another word which belongs to the same family. In this edition of the Majjhima Nikaya, it's translated as resentment, but I think at a later time I came to prefer another rendering, which is malice. The Pali word is upanaha, and the Vibhanga explains, Vibhanga and the Papancha Sutta both explain in a very similar way. Okay, first there arises anger, but when that anger is directed towards a person and it persists it arises again and again to the point where it completely overpowers the mind, then it turns into malice. It seems it's a stronger type of ill will. Ill will, perhaps, is just dislike for a person. But upanaha is that dislike which takes the form of wishing for that person to meet with some kind of harm and misery. Or it's a strong antagonism towards another person. Okay, the next word again belongs to this same family. You see, from 2, starting with number 2, continuing to 3, 4, 5, 6, even 6, even to some extent 7 and 8, all of these mental states are in some way connected with the unwholesome root of hatred. In Pali, dosa. So this is called contempt. And this means, according to the Vipanchasudani, it's disregard of favors done towards oneself. So it takes first the example of a person from lay life. So somebody is poor, maybe born into unhappy circumstances. Then somebody, another person, out of compassion, helps the poor fellow, maybe gives him the opportunity for an education, gives him some kind of vocational training, sets him up in a good job, maybe has him married into a well-to-do family. And then later that person, after he's worked his way up the employment ladder, he looks back at that person who benefited him and then thinks, what did that fellow do for me? I accomplished this all by myself. And then he despises the person who helped him. Okay, so this is the case, that's the case of a lay person. Then the case of a monk, it's somewhat parallel. We have a monk who initially is just maybe a young novice from a peasant family. He gets ordained, then his teachers give him instruction. He might be bright, intelligent, so he rises up amongst his peers, till later he becomes well-known, famous, highly respected, and he looks back at the elders who gave him his early instructions and thinks, how did they help me? I accomplished this all by myself. And thus he regards them with contempt. Okay, the next defilement was a little bit obscure, and I'm not sure that I captured the exact nuance of it. I used the rendering. Then with Nyanamoli, it actually originally used domineering, or a domineering attitude. But then when I looked at the explanations given in the commentaries, I saw that didn't fit very well. And so then I changed the rendering to insolence. And in this I followed the explanation given in the Majjhima commentary, which says that it's the sense of competitiveness that arises overpowering somebody else. For example, towards a learned person, one thinks, what is the difference between you or me? That is, you compare yourself to others, and even though that other person might be superior to oneself, but you think, I'm just as good as he is, and then one looks down at that person, or one tries to compete with that person, and then one looks insolently at that person. Okay, that's an attempt to understand the meaning. The next two, the meaning is quite clear. One is envy. And so this is explained in the Abhidhamma as the envy that arises towards the gain, honor, respect, esteem, veneration, and reverence shown towards others. I think that explanation is framed against the background of monastic life, but in mundane life it could be envying even the wealth of others, the possession of others, the position of others, many different objects of envy, but the emotion behind the envy is basically the same. It's a feeling of displeasure or dislike when others receive things or achieve things that one doesn't receive oneself, or that you haven't achieved yourself. And then the other side of envy is miserliness, or stinginess, or meanness. And this is the feeling of not wanting to share one's good fortune with others. And so again, the Abhidhamma text gives the explanation in terms of a monastic situation. That is miserliness regarding dwellings. Like sometimes a monk will have, sometimes he's offered several dwelling places and he wants to keep them all, not allow anybody else to live there. Or towards families, not wanting his own families of supporters to give support to others. Again, not wanting others to achieve gains or to share his gains with others. Not wanting others to receive praise, or not wanting to praise others himself, and not wanting to share his knowledge of Dhamma with others, from fear that others will take that knowledge, use that knowledge, and then advance by gaining that knowledge. Okay, so this is miserliness. Now we come to two defilements, which are again opposite sides of the same coin. One is called Maya, which here means deceit, deceitfulness. And the Abhidhamma gives the explanation: somebody misbehaves by body, speech, or mind, and then for the purpose of concealing it, he forms the evil wish, may others not find out about this. So this is trying to cover up, to conceal one's misbehavior, and then trying to deceive others about it. So it's explained by such synonyms as deceptiveness, crookedness, craftiness, concealment, and so on. Then the counterpart of this is called satya, which is what is translated as, in the original text, as fraud. In the notes, I use the word craftiness. And then the commentary uses the example of something called a long fish. Perhaps this could be an eel, I'm not sure. But it's said that this long fish, it shows its head, its tail to the fish and its head to snakes, in order to make both of them think, you see, I'm just like you are. So when the fish see the long tail, they'll think, he's a fish. And when the snake see his head, they'll think he's a snake. And so the trickster is somebody who shows himself to others in a deceptive way, and he says to them, I'll be your companion, your friend, your benefactor, I'll never desert you. But really, his object is just to get some personal benefits for himself. And so he's crafty or deceptive in relation to others. Okay, the next one is obstinacy. Okay, this is clearly, the meaning of this is quite clear. It means being inflexible, rigid, unyielding, sticking sort of forcefully to one's own opinions, persisting in one's own habits, being unwilling to consider the opinions of others, being unwilling to change one's opinion, to adapt to others, to challenging circumstances. Okay, the next, again, it's a little ambiguous, exactly the meaning of the Pali, but basing on the explanation in the commentary, I rendered it as rivalry. Perhaps it could also be translated presumptuousness. Okay, if we follow the explanation given in the Majjhima commentary, it says that can be of two kinds, unwholesome and wholesome. Okay, then for the unwholesome, so a lay person sees another person dressed up, maybe in beautiful clothing and ornaments, and then he thinks, I'm going to surpass that person. And so the second person dresses up, maybe with more beautiful clothing, more luxurious ornaments, more fashionable clothing than the first person, in order to outdo the other person, to show up the other person, and to stand out himself or herself. And then in the case of a monk who hears that another has learned so much Dhamma or is able to preach so much, then he thinks, I'm going to outdo that person. And so he tries to learn more, to preach longer. Maybe if the other person is able to sit in meditation for 1 hour, the one who's looking over, waiting for the person on his side to get up, to break his legs and to get up, and then thinks, I will sit longer, I'll sit for 2 hours so everybody will admire me. So this is trying to outstrip the other person based on a conceit and a wish to stand out and to be somebody special.